Right up Meridian, baby.
All right. Welcome to Right Up Meridian, a Pacers podcast. This is the inaugural episode of the inaugural podcast. It's great to have you. My name is Scott. I have Tony with me. Tony, man, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. I'm fired up to talk some Pacers basketball on the regular, besides to myself or my dog. So this is great. I'm fired up to be here.
No, I'm super excited. Let me do a quick intro, and then you can intro yourself as well. This is an idea. You and I have obviously known each other through the home network and doing things through Assembly Call and Crimson Cast, and both IU grads talk a lot of IU basketball. And through the years, we've gone to some Pacers games. We talk a lot of Pacers together, and I just felt like there was a need out there. There's a lot of good Pacers content, a lot of good Pacers podcasts, but not as many as you would think for a not a small market. I mean, I guess we are a small market, but not a unbelievably small NBA market, an NBA team that has a lot of history. And so we you and I were talking. It's like, let's do a Pacers pod. We're building the home network. It seems like this is a great place to go. So, for those who don't know, I've been doing podcasting for now 15 plus years, which makes me sound old, and that I probably am old now. I've been a Pacers season ticket holder since 2012, I think. So be going to all the games. I'm going to try and hit some road games this year. I've been Pacers fan since the mid 80s. So I definitely go way back. And we're going to try and hit things at a high level. We have some fun guests we're going to get throughout the season. We're going to try and put it out, once a week during the season, maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks during the off season. But that's kind of our thought, and we hope you guys enjoy it. Tony, tell us a little bit about I know you, but tell us a little about yourself for the audience.
Yeah, Tony Adrani here, at Coach Adrani on Twitter. Kind of got my start in media at IU back in 2010, 2011. And actually the first podcast I was ever on was with Scott in Crimson Cast back in 2011. Wow. And I just gotten into the media stuff, wanted to talk some IU basketball. So I literally just shot Scott an email and was like, hey, would love to talk IU basketball. I'm an IU student. Are you interested? And that was kind of how my contributions to Crimson Cast started. Since then, I have coached basketball, high school basketball for several years, and then kind of turned it into what I called IU Film Room with the Back Home Network, and where I basically break down IU film. What I want to definitely kind of punctuate here is that that's not what this is. I don't look at the Pacers in the same way I look at IU in terms of breaking down their sets and their X's and O's and all of that. For the Pacers, I'm just 100% a fan. I love the Pacers. They have forever been one of my favorite sports teams. My first sports memories are of the Pacers playing against the Bulls. That's kind of my first. Sorry, Scott, if that dated you a little bit of that being my first memories. But I'm just fired up to be here, like I said, because there's a lot to talk about with the Pacers, and especially as you get into a season. I think of these last few years and kind of what the Pacers have gone through to build. To me, this is a perfect time for you and I to get in kind of on the ground floor of this Pacers emergence, because I really feel that's coming for them. We'll get into that as the offseason goes, but I feel like the Pacers are on the cusp of something pretty special here. And so for you and I think it's a great time to get involved and start talking Pacers more outside of just through texting each other. And hopefully, you folks out there that are listening enjoy what we've got to say, and just really excited to be talking Pacers basketball.
Well, it's so interesting you say I do agree. It's we're kind of, I feel like we're hitting what could be a nice little run here for the Pacers, and it's there's some local people talking about it, but I'm always shocked when I listen to the NBA Ringer stuff, or Simmons and Russillo do their podcasts on Sundays. It's I feel like they talk about every team of the Pacers, and I'm not saying the Pacers have done everything right. They do a lot of things that drive me nuts, but you hear about all of these trades, these proposed trades, and it's what they gave up for Rudy Gobert, and it's making fun of everybody. And I always stop. It's the Pacers are never brought into the conversation as a thought process, crazy trade ideas, Pacers never there. But it's it doesn't make a lot of sense, because when you think about it, the Pacers were put in a very tough spot where Paul George is years ago. Paul George was I want to be traded. Now, he was actually nice and didn't put the gun to their head. He gave them a year to figure it out. They traded an all-star for what became two all-stars in Domantas Sabonis and Victor Oladipo. Those situations, we're not here to rehash all that, but it's like they traded all-star for two all-stars. And then they ended up trading those two all-stars for another all-star in Tyrese Halliburton. And I'm like, what other team does that? Like, everybody always trades it for a bag of beans that turns into nothing. It's like, how many teams have basically taken an all-star and turned it into two all-stars and turned it into another all-star? Like, basically just continuing to trade legitimate, all NBA all-stars for all NBA all-stars. Like, it never gets mentioned. And it's like the Pacers never get thought of as having a really young core, but they do. They have a lot of cap flexibility. They have a great young guard in Tyrese Halliburton. And I think they have a very bright future. I just wish they would have lost a couple more games last year and had a better shot at the top 3 pick this last week.
Yeah, I think it's a situation too where, guys are going to want to play with Tyrese Halliburton. And, that's somebody that is a, pass first. Can he score the ball? Absolutely. Good shooter? Absolutely. But he is a pass first guy that's looking to get others involved. And if you're, somebody that's kind of on the cusp of superstardom and you're in free agency and you're looking for a good situation where you want to win, but you also kind of want to be the guy, to me, the Pacers kind of look like a good spot for that. Now, the Pacers have never been a free agency destination. I think our best free agent ever was probably David West.
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say.
So, there's not a ton of...
And that was coming off like an ACL injury or something.
Correct. Yeah, kind of got him on a steal of like a gamble almost. And so, to me, you've got some opportunities here for the Pacers, and there's a window opening, I feel like, for them to really kind of make some moves here to try to propel themselves to that, in the words of Jim Irsay, the upper quartile of the upper quartile of the NBA. And so, I'm just excited about what the future holds here.
So let's talk about the draft. What are you and I were texting a little bit. What are your thoughts on the Walker pick at 7, or I guess 8?
Yeah, it was. Well, yeah, that in of itself was interesting to me because I was like, why did Washington do that? And everybody was kind of up in arms a little bit. Like, I saw some reactions when it was announced the Pacers were picking Bilal.
Yeah.
What's the last name? I don't even know how to pronounce it.
The French kid.
Yeah.
The other French
the
kid.
other French kid. Yeah. But I love Jarris Walker. If you asked me in April who the Pacers were going to pick, I would have said, and I think I did say Jarris Walker to some folks that asked. He fits the mold of what they're looking for in terms of, that guy that's a 4 that can stretch the floor. And more than anything, I think what Rick Carlisle and Pritchard and Buchanan and all those guys are emphasizing is the defensive side of the ball. That's one place the Pacers certainly have struggled in the past few years. Maybe they'll prioritize Jarris Walker and getting our boy Dan Burke back on the coaching staff to shore up that defense. But, I love the pick. I thought he was best available, especially in terms of the situation. As you mentioned, would have been nice if the Pacers lost a few more games and maybe did themselves some favors squeaking into the lot or earlier in the lottery. But with where they were and what they were dealt, I thought Jarris Walker was a good pick. Now, obviously, yet to be determined if it actually was. I always laugh when draft grades are given out, but on paper, I'm excited about what they've got.
No, the draft grades are always funny because it's like Spurs get an A. It's like, yeah, no shit. Like, of course they get an A. Like, they drafted Wembanyama. I was, so when I looked at it, I was also shocked when they drafted Bilal, I believe. Or anyway, if he's good, we'll learn. It's like Antetokounmpo. Like, we'll get there if he's good. And now we got to hope he's not good, because this is like a sucky, like George Hill, Kawhi Leonard thing where it's like, I don't want this. I don't want him to start tearing up the league. But I was just shocked because I had not heard his name on. He had never been come here for a workout. It was like way off the radar, and that's just more what shocked me. Is like, wow, this is really off the board. You're getting a young dude, and you've never worked him out. Turns out not to be the case. Here's my thoughts on Walker. Is that in that range, Taylor Hendricks was kind of getting all of the love. It's like that's a real diamond in the rough at that point. And so that's the only part where I'm like, maybe you go for Taylor Hendricks, but again, at this point, who knows who's going to be good and who's not? Like, it's kind of, it's a little bit unfair. I would also say this. I was listening to something this morning, and it's like we kind of do this both ways. They were talking about how, the Nuggets had done such a good job building a team around Joker and like guys who fit him well and having the right players around him. And, I was thinking that, as we mentioned with Tyrese Halliburton, like Tyrese Halliburton was in all of the pre-draft workouts, and he was there and he had supposedly some input on who they wanted to pick. And it's like, we look at Denver and it's like, all right, well, you got the right guys around, Jokic, and he's going to have the right kind of players around him. And then you look at other teams where they just draft kind of, and put guys together, they don't fit. It's like, well, if the Pacers want to be in that, if they want to win a title and be at that spot, and you're going to hand the keys over to Halliburton, which they are, and they should, then, it's like Halliburton probably had some input. And he probably said, I would like to play with Walker. I think his game matches my game. So I do think you have to have a bit of faith in the process and say, I think they're picking the guy that's going to be best. Again, Taylor Hendricks was kind of getting a lot of shine for that mid lottery range, but if Walker ends up being the real deal, I could see him fitting into the starting lineup in a great spot. And I got to say, man, Benedict Mathurin looks like the real deal after 1 year. So you've got to give continued credit to the Pacers for drafting the right guys in the right position. So all in all, I'm really happy with what they did, at least with their first pick.
Yeah, 100%. It's kind of the way the league's going as well. When you mentioned like bringing Tyrese Halliburton into the decision-making process, this guy is how old is Halliburton? 22, 23?
Yeah, he's
young. It's hilarious. Like, if you brought like a 22, 23-year-old into like a board meeting for like a Fortune 500 company or a Fortune 50 company.
That's so true.
But it's the way the league's going, and the Pacers kind of learned their lesson. The famous Bird quote of, Paul George, he don't make decisions around here, when it was talked about him moving to the 4. And now it's like, man, if you aren't rolling out the red carpet and getting those guys involved in the decision-making process, you run the risk of losing them, and which the Pacers have kind of had in Paul George and Victor Oladipo. And so now you kind of see a different approach here with their star player, where they're like, look, we're going to do everything we can to make this guy feel like, he's the man. And I think that's important, especially, in the year 2023.
Yeah. Well, and you have a window. Well, all right. No, totally agree. It reminds me of something that I heard Mark Cuban say very early on. Like when Cuban came into the league, he started sitting down by the players, and everybody's like, wow, that's insane. Like it was always the owners were up in the owner's suite. And, the thing that Cuban said is like, look, I own the Mavs, and the 12 most important employees, whether you like it or not, like, are the players. Like they're the highest paid employees. They are my top level employees. I want to be there while they're working, and I want to be like in contact with my most important employees, which makes sense. And the same thing here with Halliburton and the Pacers. When you look at the Pacers' second pick, the only thing that I was wondering is, Ben Shepherd looks to be one of the better shooters in the league, although maybe not Grady Dick level. Side note, like I was nervous the Pacers were going to take Grady Dick because it's very much like I hate to say it, it's like, we'll just take the white guy. And it's like, I thought that would have been like 5 or 6 spots too high. But then watching him with his suit and that TikTok video that came out, there's a part of me, it's like, it would be fun to have Grady Dick on the team. Like, it was just like, that guy is insane. I was telling friends, like, when you're a good high school player and your last name is Dick, you probably have to go one of 2 ways. Like, you probably just get tired of it and you become a wallflower, or you just lean into it and you're like, screw this, man. Like, I've heard all the stuff, and it's like, he's obviously leaning into it, and he looks like he's going to be a lot of fun in the league. I also say, Wembanyama has the most upside and might be one of the better players, but I would take the bet right here. And if we're still podcasting in 20 years, save this clip. I think I would put my money on Grady Dick having the longest career of anybody in this draft. Maybe not the best, maybe not the best player, but possibly the longest NBA career, because that dude looks like he's just going to be like a 20-year vet. But I was nervous they were going to go with Grady Dick at 7. But I'll pause for a second to get to my next point and just give you a second if you have any Grady Dick thoughts from the draft.
Yeah, I mean, that suit was electric. And the fact that, like, he owned the fact that he's from Kansas and he modeled his suit after Dorothy's slippers in The Wizard of Oz. Like, that takes some gumption, man. Like, that's impressive. I like his confidence. I like where his head's at.
It's gonna be good times. But so he's the best shooter in the draft, I think. But the with the second pick, the Pacers get Ben Shepherd, who's also a very good shooter, not at that level. Here's my other question. The Pacers do this where they get all of these picks, end of the first round, second round picks. And then it's like they even before the draft, they trade one of their picks for 2 more second round picks. And they're kind of always like touting they have all these, kind of low level picks. And they don't really do anything with them. And they get to a draft like this where they have 5 picks. It's like, all right, we know we can't draft as many people. And then you're kind of scrambling to get rid of this stuff. And they don't seem to have a lot of value. I do wonder that maybe the trade wasn't there. And that always has to be thrown out there first. But I do wonder, like, would it have been worth it for the Pacers to take all the rest of the capital they had, the other 4 picks or 3 picks they had as the first round was going off, and moving up to get Cam Whitmore? Because obviously something was going on, and maybe his medicals were awful. I don't know. But, when you start talking the end of the second round, getting a guy who was a top 5, 6 projected pick at 20, there's some real value there. I wonder, you've seen a little more of Shepherd because he was possibly in the IU portal. But, I'm just curious about that. That was the only thing I was thinking with their end of the first round, second round picks, it's all kind of a roll of the dice. So it's not like, I care. I'm expecting all these guys to be minutes players, but I wondered that, like, does it make sense at some point to kind of use some of your capital for something as opposed to just getting guys exactly the slots that you have in the end of the first round, second round?
Yeah, the Whitmore stuff was interesting. I was kind of clamoring, like, man, like, let's go get that guy. But like you said, the trade's got to be there. You got to be willing to offer up the right things, and other people are probably trying to move up as well to get a player of that caliber. Given that there weren't some crazy medical issues or interviews or whatever. I heard both. I heard there was medical stuff, and then I heard the interviews were bad. So I don't know which one is true, or maybe it's a combination of the two. But with Shepherd, you mentioned, he was a guy that I wanted IU to go after in the portal. If he wasn't going to be a guaranteed first rounder, there was talk he was going to leave Belmont, go into the portal. I'm like, man, like, I hope IU goes after this guy. So I watched some of his college film, and the dude can fill it up. I mean, that's for sure. 42% 3-point shooter on the season. Granted, he's playing in the Missouri Valley, so he's playing, the Indiana States of the world and things like that. But at the same time, the guy can fill it up. Average almost 19 points per game. Took 6 threes a game, so high volume at 42%. It's pretty impressive. So I'm excited to see what he can do. He's got a little bit of athleticism to him. He can move around on the floor. So, I thought it was a safe pick by the Pacers. It's another guy that we've drafted that he's 22, 23 years old already. Kind of the Duarte mold that I don't know that he's got a lot of like opportunities to change his game or grow into his game. I kind of think he is what what you see is what you get with him. But, that might be what the Pacers need in a second unit or something of that sort, or just a specialist that can really let it fly. So, I was happy with the pick late in the first round there with Shepherd. Interested to see what he can do.
Yeah, and the other thing, with Shepherd, sorry. Yes, all that to Shepherd. The other thing with Whitmore falling, we saw this with our own Trace Jackson Davis, IU guy, and I was seeing this brought up on Twitter. It's a good point. A lot of times when guys start falling, there comes a problem where it's not just kind of inertia, but if you're the Pacers, you probably didn't have Cam Whitmore. I mean, they had him in for a workout, but you probably thought like he's probably going to be gone, or he might be right in that range. But, once he starts dropping, it's like a lot of teams haven't worked them out or even like considered like that guy's going to be available. So then it's like someone's available you're not expecting. And it's like, I know they scout everybody, but you really scout, the Pacers probably knew 1 or 2 guys they were going to take it at 7. And obviously Whitmore wasn't one of them because they didn't take him. And then it's like they probably didn't think he would even be close to, going in the 2026 range. So it's like, all right, well, he's off the board. Just like I'm sure the Pacers didn't put a lot of, stock into drafting Wembanyama. Not they didn't want him, but it's like, what's the point in scouting him? It's not going to be there. Anyway, so I think that falls into the Whitmore thing too. But any other lingering thoughts from the draft? Or overall, like you said, I think it's a solid draft for the Pacers. I don't think it's a blowout. I don't think, it's like this is going to be awesome. But I do think this is, these do feel like solid rotational players. And it feels like with the lineup that we have, I was saying this all last year, texted to you a couple times. Like, we still need to get somebody at the high level of talent to, we need some of those like high level guys, and maybe Matherin and Halliburton can go to the next level and be there. But the rest of the lineup does feel like this is like the rest of a lineup of a very good, high level playoff NBA team. It feels like we have a very solid base. We just need to get like that upper echelon guy, which is way easier said than done, but building the base is also important too.
Sure. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of where the Cavaliers were at prior to securing Donovan Mitchell. They were kind of like, had a lot of nice young pieces and, were a fringe playoff squad. And then, we're able to add that Donovan Mitchell to kind of push them over the top and reach the upper end of the Eastern Conference. So I'm with you. I think the Pacers still need to be infused with some more talent, but I love the young core that they have.
Yep. And honestly, you look at like the last thing I'll say with the draft is I kind of joke, like I wish they would have lost a couple more games to get up there and get a pick, but it's like you look at where they finished, like maybe they could have finished under the Magic, but the Hornets were 27-55. The Pistons were 17-65. The Pacers finished last year at 35-47. So they're 8 games ahead of the Hornets. I just don't think they were going to lose 8 more games. And then you go to the West, they'd have to get under the Rockets and the Spurs both lost 60 games. The Trailblazers lost 49. Maybe you get under the Trailblazers with that 49, but it's like I still think the best they would have been is like having the 5th best odds, and then it's still just you're talking about a 2 or 3% difference. Like there was obviously 3 real massive tanking teams last year, and I just don't think unless they would have shut down Halliburton for the whole year, I don't think there's a way they could have tanked hard enough to get up in the percentages they needed.
Yeah, just too much talent on the team to be at where those bottom feeder teams were. Like you said, unless you sit Halliburton all season, and then with the Pacers' luck, they still would have fallen to like 7 or something like that.
Yeah, I know we never have luck with this stuff. Yeah. So as we go into the off season and we go into free agency, which is like next week, just real quick, you look at the Pacers, they're at $95 million. I think they have like $31 million I think the cap's like 125 or 130 or something. I'll have to pull that up, but I have the Pacers. They have a $95 million on the books for next year. That does not include the rookies, which have not been put onto the cap hit yet once those contracts are signed, but they have some money. They have like the 5th or 6th most available amount to spend. As you look through the free agents or just the need of the Pacers, what do you want them to go after? Do you have any people in mind that you'd love to see them go after? And if you say Kyrie, then you are officially off the podcast forever. So I'm just letting you know that right now.
No, sir. No Kyrie for me. I saw Harrison Barnes was mentioned. I've seen him a couple of different places mentioned as somebody that the Pacers may try to go after in free agency. And I kind of like it. Long guy, can shoot. Kind of that vet presence, has a history with Halliburton. Halliburton actually has said like Harrison Barnes is my vet that like I look up to. So that one makes a lot of sense to me on paper as like I don't foresee the Pacers going after like these top guys, but like a Harrison Barnes type player I could see fitting in with the Pacers.
Yeah, Harrison Barnes. I'm just going to kind of run through some like Westbrook, no. Middleton, no. Harden, no. Kyrie Irving, no. Porzingis, no. D'Angelo Russell, no. Love, Vucevic, Green, Van Vliet. Like Barnes is the first one on that list. Karis LeVert, gosh, no. We've been there, done that.
Done that.
It's what about like, it's kind of continuing to go through the list. Like I don't, stop me on any of these. I'm just going down the NBA free agents based on salary. Just kind of working my way down there. What about somebody like Kyle Kuzma? Like, do you have any thoughts on like a Kyle Kuzma? Like, I wonder if that's maybe a good fit going after him. He's only making $13 million a year now. I would assume he's probably in like the 17-20 range come free agency for like a 3 to 4 year deal. Any thoughts on somebody like that?
Yeah, I think I've seen Kuzma is referred to as a 2020 guy, 20 points per game, and he's going to get your team. You're going to be in the realm of about 20 wins if
That's
he's
fair.
averaging 20 points per game. I just I don't love the fit. I don't. I think he's going to demand a lot of money. And if the Pacers sign him, I'll try to be his biggest fan, but I'm not entirely sure. Um, that he'd be a great fit with kind of where this team's at in their timeline.
Yeah. Austin Reeves, or you think? I'm pretty sure the Lakers are going to try their best to keep him, but um, I don't know. I mean, I think the Pacers, it's weird for a team that didn't make the playoffs. Like, I'm not sure. I'm not even sure what they need because they have kind of all the pieces. There's a world where you just get a couple little pieces on the fringe and you let, you're going to have Halliburton. You want to give Matherin the room to grow into his spot. If you keep Buddy Hield, you still have like a lights out 3-point shooter. Miles Turner really grew into his role and seemed to really relish having the room to play on his own and also play with Halliburton. And you're going to want to let, Walker get some room. Like, again, it's probably a dumb thing to say, but there's a world where I'm like, you just run it back. And if everyone improves and grows into their role, I don't know if you need to get, a top tier free agent. I'm also not sure you're going to. So it seems like that might be the best option. And also there's just not a lot of good free agents out there.
Yeah, it's a weird free agent class. I'm really intrigued to see what Matherin looks like in year number 2. I think that
Yeah.
His that's kind of sophomore leap that you see a lot of guys make, like it could be something pretty special, I think, with just the skill that he possesses, the athleticism, the length. I think this season for Matherin can turn a lot of heads, and I think, could start being a name that a lot of people in the NBA are like, we got to watch out for that guy. He's going to be something special.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Watching him last year, it's like within the first couple of weeks, it's like, dude, this guy's an NBA player. I also love his attitude where he's just, it doesn't seem like he was ever pissed that he was the sixth man. And it seems like he understood the process that Carlisle was putting him in of, you're going to be a sixth man this year. You're going to be off the bench, but you're going to be finishing a lot of games. And like, you'll be a starter next year, but this is your role this year. And for all accounts, it seems like he took it, understood it, and was like, all right, man, like I got to work it hard and I'll be a starter next year. And like, I think some rookies might have scoffed at that, but it didn't seem like he did. And his game got better and he never really hit the wall. Like his numbers kind of plateaued, but he didn't really have that, first year dip at like 40 or 50 games. So I'm with you. I could see him taking a big leap and that could be huge for this team.
It's exciting, man. That's the main thing, that it's an off season where I've got a lot of hope and optimism for the following year, which I haven't had in a few seasons for the Pacers. So that's what's so intriguing to me and so exciting to me, is it's like I kind of am chomping at the bit for October to get here. Whereas the last few seasons, that wasn't really the case, when the Pacers were kind of just like toying with mediocrity and didn't really seem to have a plan. Now you could see the plan, and now it's finally starting to come together, and that's got me super pumped up.
The last thing with free agency, because you and I probably won't talk until after free agency, is I do wonder, looking at the list, like, does it make sense? You're going to have the money. And so, you're like, right, looking at the cap, it looks like it's going to be like 136 is kind of where it's landing. The Pacers are at 95. You throw in the rookies are probably at like 105 or 104 or something. So you're going to have like, $30 million to spend. Not saying you have to spend it all. The Pacers don't normally go right up to the cap level either. But, I do wonder with free agents, does it make any sense to sign a guy like, you mentioned Harrison Barnes, but what about like, Fred VanVleet? Just get somebody with some championship DNA and maybe give him a 3-year deal, knowing that like this is not going to get you to a championship this year, but it's like you're bringing somebody in who has some, high level NBA finals experience and, just that kind of have a massive grown up in the room. I also look at too, like this is kind of a wild pickup, but I think the money might work is like, and this also hurts somebody. I don't know why more teams don't try and hurt their own competition. What about throwing an offer to Brook Lopez? I know it's like he's getting in the way of Miles Turner, but maybe he just becomes your second string big man. He plays a little bit with Turner. Turner does like to play, out for three on the offensive end. It gives you pretty crazy defensive setup, and it hurts the Bucks. And you give him like a 2-year deal, $22 million a year. You have the money to spend, and I don't know. That's where I'm. If I was in the GM spot, if I'm in Pritchard's spot, that would be the way I might be looking at free agency. Is like, can I bring in some just kind of experienced vets to really teach playoff winning over the next 2 to 3 years, while the rest of this core kind of coalesces. Somebody who's going to provide some help versus signing, like, I'm not picking on dudes here, but like Kyrie Irving would be wild, or, like, I'm just looking at the other names, like LeVert would not be good, or like Derrick Rose, or just someone who's going to come in and cause some problems. I just wonder if looking at it that way, like Dylan Brooks, like that would be, oh my God. I'd be like, no. No. I don't know. That's how I would look at it. I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all about a vet that can help. We had that last season with, gosh, why does his name escape me? Guy they cut and then they brought him back. He never played. James Johnson or something. I don't know why I can't think of the guy's name. I need to look up the Pacers roster.
James Johnson. Yeah.
James Johnson. And, he was a veteran presence, but not really a guy that's getting a lot of minutes. Clearly, I could barely remember his name. Like, if you can bring in a vet that can actually help your team win, I think that's when you really have something like that's. You got a guy that's been there, done that. He's kind of talking the talk and walking the walk with you. Like, I do think that's valuable for where the Pacers are going. And so I'd be in with that. Like, that would be fantastic to have somebody of that caliber of player. I'm not saying it necessarily has to be Brook Lopez, but if you can find a vet that can still play and you can bring him in for a year or two, like, you're not in that championship window yet, but they can kind of help you realize where you're trying to go. And I think that could be important.
Do you think, I'm just going to fire off some final questions for you here. Do you see Buddy Hield finishing the season with the Pacers? It's his expiring contract, $19 million. He's 30 years old, a little bit older than some of the other guys on the team. Do you see him finishing the year, or is he going to be a trade asset?
I don't know. I thought he was a trade asset last year, and then
Me too. He kept on hitting threes,
right? And they kind of kept him around, and it seems like he likes the situation here. Him and Halliburton are really tight. I wouldn't be shocked if the Pacers maybe even tried to extend him, or tried to look at something where he stays around in a Pacers uniform a couple more years. Now, I would, if you made me take a bet of the Pacers are going to trade him or the Pacers are going to extend him, I'd say trade is far more likely. But I don't know, man. Like, there's something about him that it's just like, I thought that he was going to be gone soon after the Pacers acquired him, and then he just, like, there was rumors like when we got him in the Halliburton trade that he was like immediately going to be traded elsewhere. And he's stuck around now for a season and a half and seems to be a good chemistry guy. It seems like he's a tireless worker. Maybe there's a world where he stays around. I don't know.
It's funny. You look at the contracts of the Pacers, and like the second apron stuff. We're going to wrap up here in a sec. We're not going to get into it too much, but I would highly recommend listening to Bill Simmons' podcast, talking to Russillo about the second apron. It's fascinating. The more I hear about it, the more I learn, the more I'm shocked at how much the second apron. So basically, if you're over the cap, you hit what's called the first apron, where there's a bunch of like restrictions. And then if you're over the cap by another like $10 million, it's called the second apron. I think you say, or if you're in it like 2 years in a row or something. But there's some really rough stuff, and it really is going to affect teams. And I think it's a pseudo hard cap. And you look at teams like the Warriors and the Lakers, and a lot of these teams are just like they're tough. Like they just don't have a lot of moves to make, and they're really in some tough spots. The Pacers are so well positioned. And back to your point of why I think it's a great time to talk Pacers, you have a great young star in Halliburton, who you and I've seen him in person it's unreal. Like, if you love basketball, you'll love watching Tyrese Halliburton. Like, I've taken so many people to games, like just watch him. He's so much fun to watch. But you look at where the Pacers are set up, like they just don't have a bad contract on their books. Like they just don't. Guys now going for 50, 60 million a year, Turner looks like a steal. And I'm being serious at 20 and 19 million a year.
Absolutely.
Healed is at 19 next year, but that's an expiring contract. McConnell is it like 8 million, 9 million? Those are great deals. I mean, maybe the only bad contract out there is Daniel Theis at like 9 million next year and then 9.5 in 24-25, but that's not awful. Matherin's on a rookie deal. You still have Halliburton. He'll get extended at some point, but he's making 5 million next year. Like that's an all-star. That's probably one of the best 5 contracts in the league right now. Like an all-star making 5 million. So in a weird way, like you've got to give time for this team to coalesce, but you have a window that's smaller than I think people will realize, because Halliburton starting in 24-25. So in 2 seasons, he's going to be making probably $45 million a year, something in that range. Matherin, if he continues to grow in the trajectory, we think he might be your second dude making 40, 50 million a year. That'll probably start in 25 or 26. Like this, being 90 million on the cap, like within 3 years, that 90 million could be Halliburton and Matherin just on their own. So like the window is going to get real small real quick. I look at it as like, that's the only thing I would say to the Pacers is you got to give this time, but there's also like, I don't know if you want to just keep going around the edges. Like maybe you do need to make a move and just try for it soon, because I do think this great salary spot they're in right now is going to close probably in like 18 months.
Yep. 100%. I couldn't have said it better. Like, your window's open here to kind of make those moves. And then, like you mentioned, it's going to get tough. And so, it's why Buchanan and Pritchard and those guys make the big bucks to figure these things out and when it's time to pounce and make those deals. But, the clock's kind of started now, and it's like, all right, when's this deal coming?
Yeah. I mean, all right, real quick, you have 2 more minutes, then we'll wrap up. Like, that's where I look at like 2024, the free agents. And like, is this a move where do you take Buddy Hield making 20 and do you trade him for Klay Thompson, who might be making 40? I don't know if that does anything, and that probably doesn't fit the window timeline. Tobias Harris is going to be in that range. Like, do you trade, Hield for Tobias Harris and just start moving it there? I don't think Pascal Siakam gets it done, but he's going to be available next year. These are guys you could probably trade for this year, who you then try and extend next year. But I don't know. That's where I do look at it. Like maybe you do take a swing. It's just, you look at like Dallas and what they had it going with Luka and they were kind of building. And it's like, they made that trade for Kyrie. And you look at Dallas, like right now they're screwed. Like they don't have a lot of outs. They got, yeah. And it's like, they made the swing at Kyrie, and it's like wrong guy. And now it's like, you might end up losing Luka, because I don't know what the solution is for Dallas. I don't know, but when you look at that, like would that, if tomorrow the Pacers like, hey, we traded Buddy Hield for, Tobias Harris, would you be more or less excited?
That one would be kind of meh for me. Yeah. I don't know that one moves the needle much.
Yeah, I don't even know. I just don't know who we'd get, but it's something to think about as a Pacers fan. Is so many other teams are hamstrung that I wonder if you got to make a faster move. But the Klay thing is interesting. I'm just not sure Klay is going to be worth $40 million a year for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah,
and the rest of that group is like next year's free agents, like Gordon Hayward, Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, Jaylen Brown. I wouldn't have minded DeMar DeRozan like 2 years ago.
He's kind of
Hield.
The downwards.
Yeah, like Sabonis, honestly, that'd be funny. Just flip Sabonis,
bring him back.
Just bring him back and like, sorry, Miles, like he had a good 2-year run there. It's anyway. So that's last thing. The thing of the podcast. We'll keep on saying last thing and then do 12 more. It's funny, we joke about like, bringing back Sabonis for Turner. I do have to give Miles Turner a lot of credit. I went to a fan event last year. He ended up talking to my son about Legos. obviously, we'll preface it like everyone does. I obviously don't know Miles Turner personally. You never know these people, but he never gets enough credit in my mind for being just a really good dude, but also just like an unbelievable teammate and an unbelievable like citizen of the Pacers. Cause you think about it, like he comes in right when Paul George is like doing his, like, I want out, George leaves. And then that team really has nobody. And it's like, they promote Miles Turner completely. It's like Turner's block, like all the stuff that beginning of that year is all about Turner. And then within 6 months, like, oh, it's Oladipo's team. And it just became Victor Oladipo's team. And I never really heard Turner bitch or complain about it. Like, he just seemed like, okay, like whatever we got to do to win. And then, Oladipo leaves and it's like Sabonis's team. Then he's stuck with the Sabonis Turner thing. And then like he's in every trade rumor for 3.5 years. And then he resigns with us. And then it's like, all of a sudden it's Halliburton's team. And, there's a world where a guy like Turner is like, yo, man, like, when's it my team? Like, and I had it for a while. Then I could see, you're always putting me in trade rumors. Like, screw this, I want out. You never have gotten that from Turner. And I don't think that, again, it's just a smaller market. The Pacers aren't covered enough, but I've never read that story of like, hey man, like Turner's been put through stuff that like James Harden would bitch about for 3.5 years and want to be traded 8 times about. Like, I feel like Turner has never really done any of the stuff that a lot of NBA superstars would. He's not a lot of NBA stars would do in his position. So just credit to Turner there.
Yeah, I'm with you. The only thing I can think of is he last season went to the Athletic, I believe it was, and kind of like was clamoring for the Lakers to trade for him. But, it's like at the same time, he'd been in rumors for almost his whole career. It's like, that's got to wear on you mentally, to just show up and go to work every day. Basically when all your coworkers are talking behind your back, it's got to be hard. And he's been a complete pro. I don't think there's any other way to describe it outside of just been a complete pro. I'm pumped that he's still a Pacer. He's on a great deal. The fact that the Pacers were able to get that deal with Miles done was fantastic. And, he's extremely valuable on both ends of the floor to what the Pacers want to do. And so I'm with you, man. I don't think Miles gets the credit that he deserves sometimes for just kind of putting up with a lot of BS and just going about it day to day and taking it one day at a time.
Well, that athletic piece, like I forget with the timing, but that was like either right before or right after, like we offered the full offer to DeAndre Ayton. So it's like,
Correct.
It's like, if you're Turner, it's like, okay, like you just tried to hire my replacement. Like just trade me. Like you obviously, but yeah, he's been a complete pro. And that deal, again, quietly give the Pacers some credit. Last year, they had money to spend. They front-loaded Turner's deal. He made $35 million last year. And now he goes to 20 and 19 the next 2 years in his salary. It's like that gives the Pacers so much more flexibility. It gives them that window these next 2 or 3 years that he's not, but he got like an extra, like they just paid him an extra $15 million last year, but they had the cap room to do it. And that was so smart to do it in a year you're tanking. Again, a lot of little shrewd moves the Pacers make that are sometimes it feels like they're just doing stuff around the edges and they're not making big splashy moves, but they make a lot of really smart little moves like that. So anyway, well, Tony, I got a vacation coming up. I'm looking forward to free agency. We will talk when I get back and that's all over. But hey man, I'm excited to be doing this with you. I'm excited to do a full season. And I think the Pacers are in for it. Inaugural podcast. I will just end with this last question for you, Tony. Do you think the Pacers make the play-in or the playoffs next season?
Yeah, I do. I think they're a playoff team. I think they've got enough pieces. I think they're going to do enough here in free agency to, be towards the bottom probably of the Eastern playoff picture, but I think they'll be there.
I do too. I do too. I think it's room for optimism. I think it's going to be good. So I would agree. But let's see what they do in free agency and stay away from Kyrie. Just stay away from Kyrie. We don't
Please,
need that
we're
here.
begging you.
Yeah, I like his shoes. His shoes are nice, but yeah, I can buy them from Dallas. So anyway, well, thank you all for listening. Look forward to getting this podcast off the ground with everybody. For Tony, this is Scott for the Write Up Meridian podcast, signing off.